This is an actual ancient text from the Assyrian city of Nineveh. This one is about how to make glass. It's written in the Neo-Assyrian period, so somewhere between about 900 and 600 BCE, though because it's from Nineveh, we assume it's near the back end of that period. It's one of the very few examples that survive of how the Assyrians made anything in great detail. We know that they made a large number of things, but most crafts were dominated by oral tradition, oral teaching. A master would verbally pass on their wisdom to their apprentices, and that would go on and on down through the ages. Glassmaking was sort of the most high-tech thing that they did, or one of the most high-tech things that they did. And knowledge of glassmaking was quite rare, generally speaking, which is why it gets written down. It's quite rare and it's quite precise compared to the accumulated wisdom of, say, ironworking or woodworking. The text begins right away. When you lay the foundations of a glass-making kiln, you search repeatedly for a suitable day during a favorable month, so that you may lay the foundations of the kiln. As soon as you complete the construction of the kiln, you set down the Kubu lesser gods in order that an outsider or stranger cannot enter. One who is impure cannot cross their presence. You will constantly scatter aromatic offerings in the presence of the Kubu lesser gods. On the day that you set down glass within the kiln, you make a sheep sacrifice in the presence of the Kubu lesser gods, and you set down a censer with juniper and honey. You then ignite a fire at the base of the kiln. You may now set down the glass within the kiln. The persons that you bring close to the kiln must be purified. Only then can you allow them to sit near and look over the kiln. You burn various wooden logs at the base of the kiln, including thick logs of poplar that are striped, and kuru wood containing no knots, bound up with apu straps. These logs are to be cut during the month of Abu. These are the various logs that should go beneath your kiln. If you want to make lapis lazuli or zaginduru glass, you grind separately 10 minas of imanaku stone, 15 mina of salicornia ashes, and 1 2/3 mina of white plant. You mix them together. You set the glass into the cold kiln with 4 openings and arrange it between the openings. You burn a good smokeless fire, then you remove the glass as soon as it begins to turn white. You cool it off and grind it down again. You then collect it within a clean dabtu crucible, and you place the glass into a cold chamber and burn a good smokeless fire. Unfortunately, the rest of that recipe is then broken off. We do have in another place another fragment that appears to continue the same recipe, though because it's another fragment we can't be totally certain it's the same recipe. But it does say that once you have the glass, all the ingredients in between the 4 openings, you burn a good smokeless fire until your mixture glows red. You then take it out into the open air and you cool it off, but then you grind the mixture once again. You then collect it within a clean dabtu crucible and you set down the mixture into a cold kiln chamber. You burn a good smokeless fire and you cover it as soon as the mixture glows yellow. After the mixture has turned yellow, you transfer it onto the top of a fire brick. Its name is lapis lazuli or zuku glass in this case, presumably because once it dried, or not dried but cooled, it would come out a nice blue color. You can collect slow copper In a clean Dabtu crucible, you set the slow copper into a hot kiln chamber. You close the door of the kiln, you burn a good smokeless fire, and smokeless, of course, is very important for not interacting with the chemistry too much, until the slow copper glows red. You crush and you grind 10 mina of zuku glass, that lapis lazuli glass. You open the door of the kiln and toss the zuku glass on the top of the slow copper, and close the door of the kiln once again. As soon as the slow copper has fused with the glass, and it sets at the bottom of the glass mixture, you stir it with a stirrer once, twice, and 3 times. You then set down the mixture in a haragu crucible within the fire. You'll see someone at the opening stirring with the tip of a rake. You apply heat to the glass mixture within the slow copper, and once the mixture takes on the appearance of mulled wine, you transfer it onto the top of a fire brick. The name of this is tersitu. You grind separately 10 mina of tersitu, 10 mina of busu glass, salicornia harsu, which is not measured, and 2/3 mina of carnelian-colored seashells, which have been roasted. Now this would give the full mixture, these carnelian seashells, a lot of the distinctive color, and a lot of the rest of this is about making the glass have better properties, generally speaking. A lot of the very oldest glass was hard to shape, hard to keep in shape, or it could have been quite brittle, according to some reconstructions. A lot of this, with mixing it with a certain type of copper, mixing it with other types of glass, and even fire brick, so that it would absorb fire brick chemicals out of it, which would bring mud into the mixture, would have thickened the glass. So you would have had a nice blue glass that was also quite solid. Anyway, you mix all of those things, those roasted seashells, and then you mix the ingredients together and collect them in a clean dabtu pan, and you set down the mixture in a cold kiln with 4 openings, placing it on top of a stand between the openings. The base of the dabtu crucible should not reach the bottom of the kiln. You burn a good smokeless fire. The fire should come forth from the openings like a sort of like a dragon's mouth or something like that. That part is a bit damaged. And when it melts your mixture, you extinguish the fire. When the kiln is cool, you remove the mixture and you grind it down. You collect it in a clean dabtu crucible. You set it down in a cold kiln chamber, and then again burn a good smokeless fire until the glass glows red without closing the door of the kiln. Only after the glass turns red do you close the door of the kiln. Then, when the mixture glows yellow, you stir it once in your direction. After the mixture has become yellow, you will see someone at the opening of the kiln. Once the glass is solid, you transfer it into a fresh dabtu crucible, and out of the cold kiln, that which emerges is lapis lazuli or zaginduru glass. That's quite a recipe, quite a lot of heating up and cooling down. I'm sure somebody more well-versed in glass chemistry than I could tell you what's going on in all of those things. But note that it's hard to imagine how this could have been something that you discover through pure trial and error. There must have been some degree of craft wisdom, craft experience that caused people to form theories about how to get this particular type of glass. So, to 1 mina of good quality tersitu, you mix repeatedly and grind 1/3 mina of ground busu glass, 1/3 mina of amnaku, and 5 kisal of seashells. And note there's a lot of untranslated words here, but in fact, nobody knows what these untranslated words mean for the most part. When there's a clarifier like busu glass, we can tell either through context or through other places where we've seen that word that it is a type of glass. But what type of glass, we have no idea. And for something like amnaku that doesn't have any clarifier next to it. Could be anything. It could be an herb. It could be a mineral. It could be some odd kind of sand. Who really knows? Such is life. That's what you get when you deal with ancient texts. Anyway, you collect these ingredients in a casting mold and close it. You set the mold between the openings of the kiln using tashnu tongs. That which emerges is fine quality lapis lazuli or uknu glass. You fire it for 7 days within an utunu kiln. And there's quite a lot of damage to this next section. You mix in some various materials. It's a fairly extensive list of materials, including things like the tersitu, something called a tarabanu plant. You see some busu glass, some carnelian-colored seashells, some anzahu glass, some paste of some kind, possibly a red paste, and a yellow paste, and a white plant, which we assume is some kind of dyeing plant. Not dyeing like I'm dyeing, but like for dyeing clothes the color white. You collect all those ingredients in a mold, and you fire all of that for 7 days, and what comes out of that is fine quality lapis lazuli, or uknu glass. The parts that do not sink, which we assume is an idiom for melting inside the mold, you then refire them for another 7 days within an utunu kiln. 3 minas of tersitu, 8 minas of zuku glass, 1.5 minas of amnaku, and 12 kisal of anzahu glass. These are the ingredients for another type of quality of lapis lazuli uknu glass. We don't know the word for the specific kind of quality is too damaged to read, so we don't know what quality we're looking at. Another unknown quality of lapis lazuli unku glass involves 1 mina of tersitu and 2 minas of shandu. Then there's yet another variant with 1 mina of tersitu and 1.5 mina of shandu. This is a different quality, also the name of that quality is broken off, of lapis lazuli uknu glass. Then you grind and mix 1 mina of tersitu, half mina of busu glass, and half mina of amnaku. You collect these ingredients in a mold and set the mold within an utunu kiln. You fire it for 7 days and nights for the entire day, which makes me wonder if the previous ones were not the entire day, and that which emerges is reddish lapis lazuli uknu glass. If you want to make fast bronze, you first set down in a cold kiln an unknown mina of salicornia and 10 minas of amnaku. You ignite a proper fire. You frit the ingredients, which causes them to turn white. You frit them once again using an old haragu crucible. You pour water into the mixture, and on a favorable day you make an offering at the opening of the kiln. You set up a censer of juniper. You perform this act, and the rest of the ritual part of this is broken off. In the dead of night, you ignite the kiln chamber, setting within it the various mixture there. Interesting that you do it in the dead of night. Perhaps they value having that temperature gradient for this sort of glass. That's the only thing I could think of. Or it's just superstition. I do like my theory, though. Anyway, you prepare poplar, the wood which is most suitable for this activity. At daybreak, you ignite the wood beneath the kiln. You then return once again to your haragu crucible. You set down 1/3 mina of fast copper using a su'ulu tool. You set down the haragu crucible. You strengthen the fire, and you guard the fire until cracks begin to appear. You throw zuku glass into the fast bronze mixture. You ignite a fire until and when a slag begins to appear on the surface. Then you push it away 3 times using a rake. You do something which is unfortunately broken away and set down the mixture. You lift it out of the fire. This is tersitu of reddish lapis lazuli, uknu glass. You let it rest within the kiln. After you have continuously rested the fast bronze, you set it over a fire brick. You throw water over it. Procedure for reddish lapis lazuli uknu glass. Now, to make busu glass, you mix together 5 minas of tikmenu ashes from the Salicornia horns, 5 mina of imanaku, 4 shekels of male anzahu glass, and 4 shekels of seashells. You set it down into a cold kiln chamber and you ignite a good fire. You frit the mixture. You set it into an old haragu crucible. You ignite a fire. You pour water over it. This is tested busu glass. To 1 mina of tersitu of lapis lazuli uknu glass, you add 1 mina of busu glass. You crush them together and mix them. You set the ingredients down into a cold kiln. You burn a good fire until the mixture begins to swirl. You set it down into the kiln chamber with the haragu crucible that was left covered, the old one. You keep the fire burning and pour water into the mixture. You set down the mixture into a new haragu crucible, making sure you secure it. This is to be fully sealed. You open the haragu crucible on the 4th day, and that which emerges is fine lapis lazuli of fast bronze, which has been processed. The procedures for tersitu of lapis lazuli are complete. The remainder of the Door of Kiln series is not yet completed. That note at the last indicates to us that this was one section out of a much larger craft manual, just telling us how to make that uknu glass in its various different types of forms, which really just that gives an indication that there was quite a lot of richness in the ancient glassmaking, and you don't really think about it. Glass was a very big deal. I think a lot of history people know that glass was very expensive for a very long time, and seeing all these firings and coolings and firings and coolings, indeed you can sort of see that it was a lot of effort to make really not that much glass. I could say that I've seen glass blowing before, and they do use and reuse ground up pieces of old glass in their new glass for, I'm not really sure what the reasons are, but you can see that this technique is extremely old, well over 2,500 years old. Anyway, I always look for these craft manuals because it just fascinates me to see how they were making stuff way back when, and I just love all of these ancient texts. And if you also enjoy all of these ancient texts, make sure to give me a like and subscribe. Let your friends know that there's some loser on the internet reading ancient texts. And let me know down in the comments if there's anything in particular you would like me to hunt down, or any text genres or text types or just texts themselves that you'd like to see featured on the show. Thank you for listening.